السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. طيب، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. After praising Allah Jalla wa Ala, sending salutation upon the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, we proceed. And inshallah ta'ala, today we're going to carry on with our lesson, التبيان في آداب حملة القرآن. And I apologize for the delay today. There was some issues that occurred with the delay slightly, and I do apologize for that. And I thank you for your patience in waiting so patiently. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. أيها الإخوة والأخوات, we are carrying on inshallah ta'ala our book, and we were on the section في أحكام تتعلق بسجود التلاوة في الصلاة. Okay, فصل. It is the section regarding the rulings regarding سجود التلاوة in the salah. Okay, he says قال رحمه الله عز وجل إذا كان مصليا منفردا سجد لقراءة نفسه. If the one who's praying, he's منفردا, he's praying by himself. سجد لقراءة نفسه. Okay, when he's praying by himself, he has to prostrate for his own qira'ah. Okay, if you're praying by yourself in salah, and then you come across an ayah of sujood tilawa. Okay, you prostrate for that ayah when you're praying by yourself. فَلَوْ تَرَكَ سُجُودُ التِّلَاوَ وَرَكَعَ. And if he leaves the sujood tilawa and just goes to ruku', he doesn't go to sujood tilawa, he just goes to ruku'. For instance, he recites Surah Al-Alaq, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, and the last ayah, it has sujood tilawa. Instead of doing the sujood tilawa, and he goes to ruku', ثم أراد أن يسجد للتلاوة. And then after that, he went to ruku', and then he thought, oh, let me do sujood tilawa. Okay, he's not allowed to go back and do sujood tilawa. خلاص, he has to abandon, he has to leave it completely. فإن فعل مع العلم بطل صلاته. And the Shafi'is, they believe that if an individual, he goes back and he does after ruku', he decides to do sujood tilawa, okay, his salah will become invalid. If he's knowledgeable, he knows this, that's not allowed. وإن كان قد هوى إلى الركوع, and if he has gone down to ruku' ولم يصل إلى حد الراكعين, and he hasn't got to ruku' completely, he's not in the position of ruku', he has decided to go down, and as he's going down, he hasn't completely gone down, and then he thought ولم يصل جاز أن يسجد للتلاوة, and then he thought, let me do sujood tilawa instead. Okay, and he hasn't got to ruku' fully, he hasn't gone to the bowing position fully, he's allowed to go to sujood tilawa. In that ولو هوى لسجود تلاوة ثم بدأ له وركع إلى القيام جاز. But if he has decided to go down to sujood tilawa, and then as he's going down to sujood tilawa, he hasn't gone down there yet, and then he changed his mind, decided to go to ruku' instead, right? He's allowed to do that inshallah ta'ala. أما إذا أصغى المنفرد بالصلاة لقراءة قارئ في الصلاة أو غيرها فلا يجوز له أن يسجد ولو سجد مع العلم بطل صلاته. As for al-munfarid bis-salah, if one is praying by himself alone, he's not praying behind imam, he's praying by himself. Okay, and then as he's praying, he hears a qari who recites an ayah of sujood, and this qari is outside of salah. Okay, فلا يجوز له أن يسجد. If that qari prostrates and you're in salah, you can't prostrate because you heard him, because you're not allowed to do so. Okay, and if he does that whilst knowing that he's not allowed to do that, his salah will become invalid. أما المصلي في جماعة. As for the one who's praying in jama'ah behind an imam, فإن كان إماما, if he's an imam, فهو كالمنفرد, he's like the munfarid, he's like the one praying by himself. وإذا سجد الإمام لتلاوة نفسه, if the imam, he prays, he does sujood tilawa because of his recitation, وجب على المأموم أن يسجد معه, the one praying behind him has to follow him, it's obligatory upon him. فإن لم يفعل, and if he does not follow him, بطلت صلاته, his salah will become invalid. The one praying behind the imam, he has to follow the imam, he can't just decide to not follow the imam. فإن لم يسجد الإمام, if the imam does not go to sujood, لم يجوز للمأموم, the ma'mum, the one praying behind the imam, is also not allowed to go to sujood, he has to follow the imam. فإن سجد, if the one praying behind the imam, he goes to sujood whilst the imam has not gone to sujood, بطلت صلاته, his salah will become invalid, because it's obligatory to follow the imam. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, إنما جعل الإمام يؤتم به, that the imam has been made to be followed, you have to follow him. ولكن يستحب أن يسجد إذا فرغ من الصلاة ولا يتأكد. But if the imam does not do the sujood tilawa in the salah, after the salah, you can do the sujood tilawa, and that's sunnah. Yustahab, you can do the sujood after the salah, inshallah ta'ala. But it's not sunnah mu'akkada, it's not highly recommended. If he wants, he can do. وَلَوْ سَجَدَ الْإِمَامِ, if the imam goes to sujood, ولم يعلم المأموم حتى رفع الإمام رأسه من السجود فهو معذور في تخلفه. If the Imam goes to sujood and the one praying behind the Imam does not know the Imam went to sujood, he doesn't know. Okay, for instance, he can't see the Imam, he only can hear him, and he heard Allahu Akbar. Sometimes it happens, right? The sisters may be on the ground floor, the brothers may be on the first floor, or maybe the opposite. And then they hear the Allahu Akbar, the Imam, they think he went to ruku', but he's actually in sujood. And they've been in ruku' the whole time. They don't know the Imam is in ruku', in sujood, I mean. So they didn't follow him. They are excused, and their salah is fine. وَلَا يَجُوزُ لَهُ أَن يَسْجُدْ. And now when they find out the Imam went to sujood, they're not allowed to go sujood after and think, let me make up for that sujood. No, خلاص, you missed it. ولو علم الإمام بعد في السجود وجب السجود. ولو علم, and if he knows, والإمام بعد في السجود, and the Imam is still in sujood. If you figure out that he's in sujood and the Imam is still in sujood, okay, and you realize, he's in sujood, then you have to go to sujood. Okay, that's obligatory. فلو هوى إلى السجود, if you intend a desire to go down to the sujood, فرفع الإمام وهو في الهوى, وهو في الهوي, and the Imam, he comes up from the sujood whilst you are still going down. رفع معه, you go back up. You're not allowed to go up, go down, do sujood. La, you go. For instance, this may happen if someone comes late. The Imam, he's gone down to sujood tilawa, and then you come late, and then you decided to during the salah, and you're going down to sujood. As you go down, the Imam is getting up. Khalas, you go up with him. You don't have to go down to the sujood. ولم يجوز السجود. The sujood is not allowed in this instance. وكذا الضعيف الذي هوى مع الإمام إذا رفع الإمام قبل بلوغ الضعيف إلى السجود لسرعة الإمام وبطء المأموم يرجع معه ولا يسجد. And also the one who's weak, who the Imam, he goes to sujood, and let's say this old person or person who's sick, who's very slow, and then he's intending to go down to sujood, and as he's going down to sujood, the Imam gets up. So now he doesn't go to sujood, he gets up with the Imam. That includes also the one who's slow. If you're extremely slow and the Imam as he's very fast and he's going down to sujood and he gets up, as you're still going down to sujood, you go up with the Imam, you don't go down to the sujood. وَأَمَّا إِذَا كَانَ الْمُصَلِّي مَأْمُومًا, and if the musalli is ma'moom, he's praying behind the Imam, the one who's praying, he's following an Imam, فلا يجوز له فلا يجوز أن يسجد لقراءة نفسه ولا لقراءة غير إمامه. If the one praying behind the Imam, he recites an ayah of sujood, let's say it's Dhuhr, Asr, you're praying behind the Imam, you recite a surah that has sujood tilawa in it, okay, you are not allowed to go down to sujood. You recite the ayah of sujood, khalas, you're not allowed to go down to sujood. You have to only go down to sujood, the Imam goes to sujood. فإن سجد بطلت صلاته. If he goes down to sujood, okay, his salah will become invalid. ويكره له قراءة السجدة ويكره له الإصغاء إلى قراءة غير إمامه. And it's also disliked to recite a surah when you're praying behind Imam. It's disliked to recite a surah that has sujood tilawa in it. Disliked. And it's also disliked to listen to someone who is not your Imam, who is reciting a surah of sujood, the ayah of sujood. Right? It's disliked for you to do that as well. Wallahu a'lam. فصل, the next section. في وقت السجود للتلاوة. The time of سجود التلاوة. قال العلماء, the ulama, they say, ينبغي أن يقع عقيب آية السجدة التي قرأها أو سمعها. The سجود التلاوة, it happens straight after the ayah of sujood, okay, that he recited or that you heard. فإن أخر ولم يطل الفصل سجد. But if he delays it a bit and there's not a huge gap in between the ayah of sujood when you recited it and when you prostrated, it's allowed, you can do sujood. Okay? وإن طال, okay? وإن طال, and if it's long, the gap that's between sujood al-tilawa, okay, if it's long, فقد فات السجود فلا يقضي على المذهب الصحيح المشهور. Okay, وإن طال, if it's long, فقد فات السجود, the time of sujood has passed you now. You're not allowed to do the sujood. Okay, you've missed the opportunity. Okay, فلا يقضي على المذهب الصحيح المشهور كما لا يقضي صلاة الكسوف. He does not make it up. And that's the correct madhab, Imam Nawawi, he says. كما لا يقضي صلاة الكسوف. Just like you don't make up the eclipse prayer. The eclipse prayer has a time whilst the eclipse is happening. If the eclipse is over, you don't make it up because you missed it. You're not allowed to make it up. And that's the same with sujood tilawa. If you recite an ayah of sujood tilawa and then you left a big gap, let's say an hour, 2 hours went by, and you didn't do sujood, khalas, you don't make it up. You leave it. Okay? وقال بعض أصحابنا, some of the ulama of Shafi'i, they say فيه قول ضعيف, okay, which is a weak opinion. إنه يقضي, which is that you're allowed to make it up. كما يقضي السنن الراتبة. It's like you make up the sunnah which is attached to the obligatory prayers. You know, the 12 rak'ahs in the day, ratiba. You're allowed to make it up if you miss it. They say that you can make it up like that. But that is كسنة الصبح والظهر وغيرهما. Just like the sunnah before Fajr and the sunnah of Dhuhr that precedes it, or the sunnah after it, you're allowed to make it up and so on. But that's a weak opinion, right? And that's incorrect, he says, Imam Nawawi. وأما إذا كان القارئ أو المستمع محدثا عند تلاوة السجدة فإن تطهر على القرب سجد. He says if the reciter, he does not have wudu, he's in a state of ritual impurity when he recites the ayah. He's in a state of ritual impurity. And then when he recites the ayah, he realizes he's not in a state of purity, so he makes wudu and then he prostrates, he says that's allowed. Okay? وإن تأخرت طهارته حتى طال الفصل فالصحيح والمختار الذي قطع به الأكثرون أنه لا يسجد. But if there's a long period between when he recited the ayah of sujood and when he prostrated and made wudu and prostrated for it, if there's a long gap in between that, then he does not do the sujood because there's a big gap. Whenever there's a long gap, you don't do it. Okay, that's the correct opinion. وقيل, and it's said, which is a weak opinion, that he's allowed to prostrate. Okay, وهو اختيار البغوي من أصحابنا. Also that's the opinion of Imam al-Baghawi, who's from the Shafi'i scholars. كما يجيب المؤذن, okay, بعد الفراغ من الصلاة. And his example he gives for that, the one who delays it and he does it as well. He said, just like when you are in salah and the mu'adhin is calling the adhan, after you finish the salah, you're allowed to repeat after what you would say after the mu'adhin after that. So they use that as an example to say that here's a similar case, you're allowed to do it because you have an example. والاعتبار في طول الفصل في هذا بالعرف على المختار والله تعالى أعلم. And they say that the period, how long it should be, the gap between this ayah of sujood and when you do the sujood, it is based on the customs of the people. What the people consider too long, okay, then you shouldn't do it. What the people consider short, then it is based on the customs of the people. And they say that that is بألا يزيد على قدر ركعتين بأخف ممكن من الوسط المعقول. And it should be that it shouldn't be the period between the ayah sujood and when you do the sujood should not be longer than how long it takes to pray 2 rak'ahs that are normal 2 rak'ahs, not long. Average 2 rak'ahs, which is about 3 minutes. You could say, right? 3 to 2 minutes. It shouldn't be longer than that. That's what they say. Wallahu a'lam. فصل في حكم تكرار آية السجدة. The ruling of repeating an ayah of sajdah. إذا قرأ السجدات كلها أو سجدات منها في مجلس واحد سجد لكل سجدة بلا خلاف. وإن كرر الآية الواحدة في مجالس سجد لكل مرة بلا خلاف. فإن كررها في المجلس الواحد نظر فإن لم يسجد للمرة الأولى كفاه سجدة واحدة عن الجميع وإن سجد للأولى ففيه 3 أوجه. He says that if an individual, he recites an ayah to sujood, he recites more than one ayah of sujood. For each ayah he recites as sujood in one sitting, he does sujood for it. Okay? But if he repeats one ayah of sujood, okay? إن كرر الآية الواحدة في مجالس. If he repeats one ayah, but in different sittings, he does sujood for it as well, for each time, without any differing. But if he repeats the same ayah that has sujood in one sitting, right? One sujood suffices. You don't have to sujood every time you repeat the ayah. So now I repeat, for instance, كلا لا تطعه وسجود واقترب. It's ayah of sujood. I do sujood once now. And then I repeat the ayah again. كلا لا تطعه وسجود واقترب. The second time, and third time, and fourth time, fifth time, I repeat it, I don't need to sujood. The first time suffices me because it's one sitting. Now, وإن سجد للأولى, if he does sujood for the first time he recited the ayah in one sitting, okay, there's 3 ways of doing it. أصحها أن يسجد لكل مرة سجدة لتجدد سبب بعد توفية حكم الأول. He says that the most correct opinion, okay, it is that every time يعني in sajda الأولى, meaning that every time he comes to an ayah of sujood and he does sujood for it, right? That's what we said initially. He should do sujood for it. But you have 3 options here. The first option is that every time you come across an ayah, and the most correct is that every time you come across an ayah of sujood, you should do sujood tilawah because a new reason has occurred, which is a new ayah, right? وَالثاني تكفيه سجدة الأولى عن الجميع. Okay? The second opinion, it is that one sujood, if he's reciting numerous ayat of sujood in one sitting, one sujood tilawah suffices for all the ayat of sujood. That's the second opinion. The third, it is إن طال الفصل سجد وإلا فتكفيه الأولى. The second opinion, or the third opinion, I mean, if there's a big gap between the first ayah of sujood and the second ayah of sujood, there's a big gap in between them, meaning you recite a lot in between, etc. طيب, then they say, okay, then he should do sujood. He should do sujood again. But if there's not a big gap, let's say I recite one ayah that has sujood and I come across and maybe 3 minutes later another ayah of sujood, right? Then the first ayah of sujood that I did sujood for will suffice me for the second one, inshallah ta'ala. أما إذا كرر سجدة الواحدة في الصلاة فإن كان في ركعة فهي كالمجلس الواحد فيكون فيه الأوجه الثلاثة وإن كان في ركعتين فالمجلسين فيعيد السجود بلا خلاف. And we consider the salah as well, the different rak'ahs of the salah, different gatherings. So the first rak'ah, we consider it one sitting, right? So if I recite in one rak'ah more than one ayah of sujood, I have the first opinion that is I do sujood for each one. But I also have the other opinion where the ayahs are close together, that the first sujood will suffice me, inshallah ta'ala, right? But if I again, the second rak'ah, I recite another ayah of sujood, then it's another sitting, so I should do the sujood again. And Allah tabarak wa ta'ala knows best. فصل في حكم سجود التلاوة للراكب على الدابة. He says the ruling of sujood tilawah for the one who is on a mode of transport, whether it's a riding beast or car or train or whatever. He says إذا قرأ السجدة وهو راكب على دابة في السفر سجد بالإيماء. If the individual, he recites an ayah of sujood and he is on a mode of transport traveling, then he does sujood through ima by signaling, meaning he just lowers his head because he's not able to go to sujood fully. He signals by lowering his head a bit like that. هذا مذهبنا ومذهب مالك. That's the madhab of the Shafi'iyya and also the Malikiyya and the Hanafis and also Abu Yusuf, who is the student of Imam Abu Hanifa, or Muhammad, Muhammad who's Ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, who's student of Imam Abu Hanifa, and Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, وزفر وداود وغيرهم and others. وقال بعض أصحاب أبي حنيفة لا يسجد. And some of the Hanafis, they say that he shouldn't prostrate. والصواب مذهب الجماهير, and what's correct, he said, is the madhab of the majority, which we said that he signals with his head that he does sujood. وأما الراكب في الحضر, and as for the one who is on a riding beast or mode of transport, but he's not traveling, he's a resident, maybe meaning that he's within the city, for instance, he has not on the distance of traveling. He has left the city, he has left his country, right? Let's say he's in a car from one side of London, he's going to North London, for instance, from West London to North London. He's not a traveler. Okay, فلا يجوز أن يسجد بالإيمان. They say that he's not allowed to do sujood with iman, with signaling. It's either he gets out of the riding beast or the car and he does sujood fully, or he doesn't do sujood at all. Now, wallahu alam. فاصل, the next section. في حكم قراءة آية السجدة في غير محلها من الصلاة. The ruling of reciting of ayah of sujood في غير محلها من الصلاة, in other than its place in salah, in other than in its place of salah. He says إذا قرأ آية السجدة في الصلاة قبل الفاتحة سجد بخلاف ما لو قرأها في الركوع والسجود فإنه لا يجوز له أن يسجد لأن القيام محل القراءة ولو قرأ السجدة فهو ليسجد فشك هل قرأ الفاتحة فإنه يسجد للتلاوة ثم يعود إلى القيام فيقرأ الفاتحة لأن سجود التلاوة لا يؤخر. Now, he says here that if the individual, he recites an ayah of sujood في الصلاة, okay, in the salah, before he recites even Fatiha, okay, before he recites even Fatiha, which is not correct, obviously, not what the individual should do, but he should prostrate anyway. But if the individual he recites an ayah of sujood in ruku' and sujood, then he's not allowed to prostrate. Why? Because it's not time of reciting Quran. You're not allowed to recite Quran in ruku' and sujood. The Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited that. But when you're standing, it is a place of recitation, right? But obviously you shouldn't recite before Fatiha. And it's وَلَوْ قَرَأَ السَّجْدَةَ, if he recites an ayah of sujood, فَهَوَ لِيَسْجُدَ, and then he intends to prostrate, okay? And then فَشَكَّ هَلْ قَرَأَ الْفَاتِحَةَ, and then he what do you call it, he has doubt, have I recited Fatiha? فإنه يسجد للتلاوة, okay, then he should go to sujood التلاوة, ثم يعود إلى القيام, and then he should come back to standing, فيقرأ الفاتحة, and then he should recite الفاتحة, لأن سجود التلاوة لا يؤخر, because the sujood التلاوة shouldn't be delayed, he should do it straight away. But obviously it's not correct an individual recites an ayah of sujood before Fatiha. Fatiha is the first thing you should recite, and then recite anything after that. But he's saying if this happens, then that's what you should do in this circumstance. والله أعلم. فصل في حكم قراءة آية السجدة بالفارسية. He said, what's the ruling of reciting the ayah of sujood in Persian or other than Arabic? Because the Hanafis, they believe that you can recite the Quran in Salah or outside of Salah in other than Arabic, right? So let's say I recite an ayah of sujood in English or Persian or any language. لو قرأ آية السجدة بالفارسية لا يسجد عندها كما لو فسر آية سجدة وقال أبو حنيفة يسجد. He says if individual he recites an ayah of sujood in Persian or in English or any language, right, that he speaks, he does not do the sujood because it is like an individual who's explaining an ayah of sujood. Okay, but Abu Hanifa, he says he should prostrate because he believed you're allowed to recite the Quran in Persian, but that's incorrect. فصل في عدم ارتباط سجود المستمع بالسجود القارئ. This section is about the sujood of the mustami', the one who's listening, his sujood, it is not connected to the sujood of the reciter. And this is what the Shafi'is, they believe. He says, إذا سجد المستمع مع القارئ لا يرتبط به. If the mustami', the listener, he prostrates with the reciter, the one who recited the ayah of sujood, لا يرتبط به ولا ينوي الاقتداء به. He does not connect to him. يعني he doesn't intend that the reciter is his imam and I'm following him. He does not intend that. وله الرفع من السجود قبله, and he's allowed to get up from sujood before him. يعني. Some people, they may think that the reciter, he goes to sujood and I'm listening to him. So when he goes to sujood, I follow him like he'll be my imam. And then some people, they think I can't get up from the sujood before him because he's like my imam. لا. You can go to sujood, okay, and you don't intend that he's going to be imam. And then you're allowed to raise your head before him as well, and that's absolutely fine. فصل في حكم قراءة آية السجدة للإمام. The ruling of reciting the ayah of sajda for the imam. He says لا تكره قراءة آية السجدة للإمام عندنا سواء كانت الصلاة سرية أو جهرية ويسجد متى قرأها. Okay, he says it's not disliked for the imam to recite an ayah of sujood at any time. Okay, regardless if the salah is the quiet prayer or loud prayer. Even if it's Dhuhr and Asr and the Imam recites an ayah of sujood, he should go to sujood. That's what the Shafi'is, they believe. وقال مالك يكره ذلك مطلقا. Imam Malik believes that it's disliked to recite the ayah of sujood in the salah. And Abu Hanifa and Ahmad, they say تكره في السرية دون الجهرية. The Hanafis and the Hanbalis, they believe that the Imam, he should recite in the loud prayers, but as for the quiet prayers, he shouldn't do the ayah of sujood because he can confuse people. He randomly goes to sujood. Right, you can confuse people. They may not understand what's going on. والله أعلم. فصل في حكم سجود التلاوة في الأوقات المنهي عنها. Okay, the ruling of سجود التلاوة at the times that's منهي عنها, the time that is prohibited. He says لا يكره عندنا سجود التلاوة في الأوقات التي نهي عن الصلاة. There's times that you're not allowed to pray the voluntary prayers, right? People may think that am I allowed to prostrate the سجود التلاوة at the times that is prohibited, like after Fajr and after Asr, where we're not allowed to pray the voluntary prayers. He says it's not disliked to do sujood tilawa at the times that is prohibited to pray the voluntary prayers. وبه قال الشعبي, and this is what Imam al-Sha'bi believed, والحسن البصري وسالم ibn Abdullah والقاسم وعطاء وعكرمة وأبو حنيفة وأصحاب الرأي ومالك في إحدى الروايتين. And this is what all these scholars that we just mentioned, that was their opinion. وكره ذلك طائفة من العلماء, and a bunch of the ulama, they dislike that. منه عبد الله بن عمر وسعيد المسيب ومالك في الرواية الأخرى وإسحاق بن راهوية وأبو ثور. And these ulama that we just mentioned from the Sahaba, the Tabi'in and so on, they disliked that it was done at the times that it's prohibited to do sujood tilawah as well. والله تعالى أعلم. فصل في حكم قيام الركوع مع قام السجود التلاوة. What is the ruling of doing ركوع instead of سجود التلاوة? Right? Someone may say, I can't do سجود التلاوة, so I'll do ركوع instead. What is the ruling on that? لا يقوم الركوع مقام سجود التلاوة في حال اختيار. The ركوع does not replace سجود التلاوة at all when you do it out of choice. هذا مذهبنا ومذهب جماهير العلماء من السلف والخلف. And that is the opinion of all the madhahib, okay, from the Salaf and the Khalaf, except the Hanafis. قال أبو حنيفة رحمه الله يقوم مقامه. The Hanafis, they believe that the ruku' can replace it. For instance, an old person who can't go to sujood, if he does ruku' instead, he believes that he replaces it. ودليل الجمهور القياس على سجود الصلاة. And the evidence of the majority, it is like the sujood of salah. The sujood of salah, if an individual is not able to do it, right, what does he do? He signals. Right? He signals with his head, going to sujood, but he doesn't ever do ruku' instead. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Now, we'll stop at this bab because the next bab is very long. And I know that today I have delayed you guys a lot. And I don't want to keep you very late, inshallah ta'ala. So open the floor for questions that you may have. Inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khaira. Now, if anyone has any questions, then you may ask, inshallah. My father, okay, I'll answer this question first. Can you repeat the sajda when it's repeated? Now, if a verse of sajda comes again in the same rak'ah, you can repeat it now. You can repeat that, that's absolutely fine. Okay, what advise me? My father is not talking to me, my mom and my sisters, and we did not do anything to him, and we are trying our best to give him his rights as a father. Even when he is doing this to us, we want advice that can motivate us to give him his rights. Be as kind as possible to him. Try to, inshallah ta'ala, not to do anything that agitates him or may annoy him, that may cause him to, not speak to you, etc. And make a lot of dua for him and be dutiful to him and go out your way to be kind to him. Go out your way to do extra kind acts that he doesn't ask for, out of your own accord, inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah to make it easy for you. How about a Quran teacher listen to the student? They do go into sujood as well. If the student does it, yes. If the student, he recites ayah of sujood, if he goes to sujood, the teacher goes to sujood with him as well. Whoever, regardless of who he does sing, they go to sujood with him, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. Now, any other question? Fika barakallah. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Any general tips for embarking on seeking knowledge? First of all, to be sincere and to find a teacher and to find somewhere to learn. And once you have the guidance of a teacher, they will tell you where to start and what to do and so on, inshallah ta'ala. The most important thing is to find a teacher who teaches you, because obviously you can't seek sacred knowledge by yourself, meaning you can't learn by yourself. You're required to go to the teachers who are grounded in this stuff, who can teach you, and they'll give you the right guidance. They'll tell you where to start from and so on, inshallah ta'ala. Are we allowed to do sajda tilawah outside of salah without wudu? You should do it with wudu. Now, we mentioned in the last lesson that the condition it is that you have wudu in order to do sujood tilawah. Wallahu a'lam. Now, is it a must to do sujood sajda tilawah or reading Quran? No, it's sunnah. Now, you may tafaddali. You may leave. It is not a must to do it while you're doing Quran, while you're reciting Quran. It is sunnah, but it is recommended that you do it. Wallahu a'lam. Now, what is the ruling on wearing the niqab? Is it sunnah or obligatory? This is the matter the ulama they differ upon, and you should follow a scholar that you trust. Now, some of the ulama they believe it's obligatory, and some of the ulama they believe that it is sunnah. Ala kullin, they are all in consensus that if there's fitna, right, and the person is a fitna, that the person should wear khilaf, they should wear niqab. There's no differing on that, but the differing is the hijab only suffices and the niqab is part of it. So follow a scholar that you trust. Wallahu a'lam. Is it okay to have a Quran partner that will read too often and allocate time and read the page together for reading hifz purposes. It's not about is it okay. You should have that. You should have a Quran partner, a classmate or peer, etc. that you revise together. Now keep motivated as well. You revise together. You help each other out. So on. It's very important that you have that. That you have companions that you learn Quran with, Quran buddies. And what is the difference between waswas and riyah? They're two different matters. Riyah, it is, you may be excused. Riyah, it is showing off. It is lack of sincerity. But waswas, it is whispers that you get from shaitan in order to make you doubt your deeds, and so on. So they're two different matters. Completely different. Riyah has to do with, is a minor shirk, which is that you may be doing an act of worship for worldly gain, or to be praised, or to get something that is worldly, and you're not seeking the akhirah, and lack of sincerity. Whereas waswas is that whispers that you get from shaitan that can affect many different things, whether it's ibadah, your daily conduct, etc. Wallahu alam. Okay, how can you connect with the Quran when you don't understand Arabic, especially when you pray? Can you give advice on that? Look at the meaning, the English translation of the Quran for the time being, so that the salah can be better, inshallah ta'ala. But I do advise that you learn Arabic. Find a class that you can learn Arabic so that you can understand the Quran better, inshallah ta'ala. A student knowledge should actively be learning the Arabic language in order to better their relationship and their ibadah, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Allahu alam. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here. We'll take this last question. Is it sunnah or must to have wudu when touching the Quran? You must have wudu to touch the Quran. Without wudu, you cannot touch the Quran. I don't know what you're referring to. I didn't completely understand the point you made of the da'if opinion of sajda. I don't know what you're referring to. There was an opinion that was weak that Imam Nawawi mentioned, right? Which was, let me try to go back. I don't remember what you're referring to. If you can remind exactly what the point was, and I can tell you. Because he mentions a number of things and he says that they're weak. Now, okay, the weak opinion that he mentioned, I remember it was that that you can make up if you recite ayah of sujood tilawa, and then you leave a big gap, and then you decide to make it up. Okay, there's some of the ulama, they believe that you can make it up, but he said that that's a weak opinion. You do not make it up because the reason for it is time has passed. Now that was it. Wallahu alam. We'll leave it here, inshallah ta'ala. Now you cannot touch the Quran without wudu. You cannot touch the Quran without wudu. نعم والله أعلم. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. So inshallah ta'ala, the class will be from 7 p.m. every Wednesday from now on, inshallah ta'ala. Today we had some issue that delayed us, but inshallah 7 p.m. every Wednesday we'll have the class, inshallah ta'ala. جزاكم الله خير for your patience. May Allah reward you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.